Hey YouTube, Ro here. I was doing some thinking about the 2020 patio garden in the spring, the summer, and the ongoing right now fall. And I was inspired. I took a lot of notes, like, and when I say a lot of notes, I mean a lot of notes. I took pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of notes. Lots and lots of notes. What I'm going to cover today is what I deemed to be the highlights of my 2020 springtime growing season. We're not going to talk about summer, although some of these plants went through the spring, through the summer, and some are still even going through the fall. But we're just going to talk about what worked out for me in Zone 6B, Akron, Ohio, for the springtime. Okay, so I wrote down that my best producers this spring were the Petunias, the lantanas. Both of those were store-bought, and they were hanging plants, flowering hanging baskets. My cut and come again lettuce, red mustards, collards, choy, and lots of herbs. To start with, the petunias and lantanas. Now remember, not too long ago, just like 10 seconds ago, I was saying that some of my spring flowers and herbs and stuff went from spring and are still going now. The lantanas and petunias were one of those. It's now November 30th, but both of those plants were still going strong up until about November 15th. I mean, they took a decent drop in temperature and were still fine. And then when it got like really cold, right around, call it 35-ish, 35-ish, they just kind of went kaputs in a day or two. But that's a long growing season. You figure, let me see, I got those petunias and lantanas on May 23rd, and then they didn't die until about November 15th-ish. So that's 6 months I got out of that, okay? That is awesome. That was great. I definitely would recommend those if you're in my type of growing area. The lettuce, the cut and come again lettuce, I must have said 15 times in the videos going through those container garden tours that I couldn't keep up with it. I only did one rail planter, and the entire time it was still too much for me. So I absolutely, that was one of my favorites. Big producer for many weeks up until, and even when the ants were bringing the aphids, I was still able to get them cleaned off and keep using them. It wasn't until they started to bolt, basically. It was either they bolted or, truthfully, I had only gotten about maybe 4 or 5 harvests off of them. So, after so many harvests, they don't come back again. But for just one person, one rail planting, and doing, I think I did black seeded Simpson and who did I do? Let's see here. Well, I don't see in my notes, and I don't want to spend too much time looking at it, but I know that it was black seeded Simpson and then something equally, you know, common, but I don't have it in front of me right now. So the lettuce I will absolutely do again, and I'm going to move it from my rail planter to just a smaller, separate like container, maybe like an 8 inch, and work from that and see how that works out. Um, the red mustards. So the red mustards were another one that went from the spring and are still going here into the fall. Like that was great. I was not expecting that. I thought that they were just going to be for the spring, die off, do some stuff, separate in the summer, and then replant again in the fall. And didn't work out that way. In fact, I had two plants that actually made it from spring, summer, and still going here now in the fall. So definitely the Japanese red giant mustards were a hit for me. I really love them. They're spicy, they're garlicky, they're tender. They go great so many different ways. You can put them in the soup. You could eat them raw. I used them as wraps one time. That was really good. Sprinkle them in your salads if you want something just with a little bit of kick. Really, really, really good. Or I've shredded it up and added it to different things. Matter of fact, yesterday I made turkey soup from some of the leftover Thanksgiving turkey. Don't you know, some red green or some red giant mustards went into that pot too, and they were delicious. They were a great addition. So I love those. I talked about collards. Now, the collards that I had at the time were the Aerogarden variety, and I had started them in a pod in like an Aerogarden in the house, and then moved it outside. I ended up being able to split them up, and I think I had about 4 plants, I want to say. Two of them survived the breakup and transplanting, and both of them did really good well into the summer. So I definitely want to do those. I know I have loads of pictures with different foods and different harvests of those collards, so I know that they were really productive for me. So I will do that again. However, I won't be doing the Aerogarden variety. I actually bought a couple different varieties of collards, and they came from, I want to say, Territorial Seed Company. I think I got like an African collard and an Ethiopian collard, I want to say, something like that. Anyways, I got like 3 packets of collard seeds, and I'm not going to buy any pods from Aerogarden until I'm done using these up. So I won't be using those again, but I will be planting collards again because they did very well here. And then we have choy. Choy, again, another one that went from the spring all the way through to the fall and are still growing in my garden right now. Yay, which is great because I actually love and the only choy I grew in the spring and summer was the purple lady bok choy. And I enjoy that. It's very watery, super mild flavored, crisp. I don't know, maybe watery is not the word, juicy. Goes great in anything, seriously. It doesn't like, it's kind of just takes on the flavor of whatever you're cooking. It doesn't really have a flavor. So you can really throw it in anything, honestly. And I'm one for the ones that I have growing in the house in my DWC system, which only grow to be about maybe 5 inches tall or so. I pick the leaves while I'm walking by and eat them. Those are snacks. Piece of cake. And I like them, you know. They're good for me. They're healthy, right? And I know that they've been grown in the best of care. They don't have pesticides on them, yada, 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 all that good stuff. So definitely choy, because I still have 2 plants right now that I could think of, and probably more. That's some growing in the house, but the ones that I have growing outside, they were started in the Aerogarden over the winter and then moved outside into the spring, and they're still going. I mean, I have no doubt that these might make it well into the winter. I'm talking like January. I'm expecting to have those. I wish I had more plants so that I could be harvesting more from them, because at the moment, I'm not going to go into it, but the collards and the mustards that I planted for this fall are much too small. I started way too late, and they're just not even going to get really big, I don't believe. I could harvest them as baby greens right now, but I would much prefer to let them grow. And if I had more of the purple ladybug choy growing, then I would be harvesting more of that, but I don't have anymore. So outside of those two plants, which is only giving me so much because with it being fall, it's rainy, there's less light, there's less heat. So they're not growing very fast, but lesson learned, I will do things different next year. And then the final thing I had on that list that I mentioned was my herbs. I did what I called my herb planter, my herb tower. I had gotten the 3-section stackable planters from Dollar Tree, and I think I bought 6 of them. I wish I would have bought like 20 of them. But I bought 6 of them not knowing how big they would be and how well they would work, but they work great for all of the herbs that I put in it over the course of this whole year, not just in the spring. And a lot of them are still there from the spring too. So what I have in that herb tower right now, still from the spring, is curly parsley, mint, yep. Cilantro bolted on me in the middle of the summer, but then I replanted it after it cooled down a little bit, and it's been in there ever since. So almost the whole 3 seasons for the cilantro. Basil, that didn't die out until probably around the same time my flowering baskets got done, so middle of November. So from early, I think I started those, all of them I started in the Aerogardens, and then I moved them into the stackable planter in the house, which I was then growing under a grow light. And then when I moved them outside after, getting them acclimated to the weather, they were already put together. So there was no transplanting or anything. I think that helped. But yeah, I had... so the basil did good, the parsley, the cilantro, dill definitely did good. Nasturtiums are doing good in it right now. They are cold now. I'm trying to think. Let's see, what else did I have growing in there? Some thyme. Thyme is going really, really good. And then I didn't plant it in the planter, but next year I'm going to throw some sage in there too. I think that's going to do really well as well. So those are my best producers for spring of 2020 in my little container garden. Now, can't talk about the good without talking about the bad. So my worst producers for the spring, first is the radishes. I was completely frustrated with the radishes. I have grown them in my rail planters before, so I know that it works. But this time around, I did not get a 1. And I don't even know what the issue was. All I got was leaves. I have no idea. Maybe it was some kind of nutrient deficiency. I don't know, but I didn't get anything. And I actually ended up using some of the greens just so that I could say I got something out of planting those radishes. And then I let the rest go to seed and saved all the seeds so that I would have more, because they were the wasabi variety from Baker Creek. And I used all of my seeds thinking I was going to get some, and then I didn't. And I'm like, I'm not buying another packet. I didn't even get a 1 from it. So I saved all the seeds from letting those plants go to seed. And I haven't tried them yet, but hopefully those will be viable, and I'll be able to try growing those radishes again. But so, okay, that was, I'm thinking, my fault, but I just don't know what I did wrong. My kale. I transplanted kale outside, and I think 2 things went wrong with this. The first is that my container was too small. I was using like something that's even smaller than a rail planter. It was the Dino Kale. It never got really big, which is fine because you know that when you use a smaller container, your plants aren't going to get as big as they could. They're not going to reach their full potential. So that I was expecting. But then I also ended up getting really bad, I think they're called cabbage worms. They're the little green ones. At first I started out, I was picking them off left and right, and then the warmer it got, the harder it got. I just finally gave up and let the worms have the plants. So I didn't actually harvest hardly anything off of those dino kale. Maybe a couple things, but I mean nothing to write home about. And I would try it again, but I just need to figure out a different approach to dealing with cabbage worms because they went to town. Once you get 2 or 3 of them on there, and I swear I was picking them off, but then the next morning I come back out, more of my plant be gone. It was just a mess. So I finally just let it go. But anyways, so that was a bad one. What else we have here? Oh, spinach. I planted some giant noble spinach in the spring, and I direct seed sowed it. It did not do well. It did germinate, and it grew. It grew so slow, though. And then by the time the summer came around, and it was finally starting to get of size where you'd be wanting to harvest some of the leaves, at full size, at full maturity, it bolted. So I think I maybe got 1 salad out of all the spinach seeds that I planted, which was probably about 4 or 5 of them. If I'm going to do that again, I think I either need to start them way earlier inside and transplant them when they're much bigger, or sow them outside much sooner than I did. And my last bad producer for this 2020 spring in the container garden was rosemary. I actually had a nice rosemary plant that I had grown in the Aerogarden. It was doing really good. It had reached a nice size. It was getting full. It smelled amazing. It looked amazing. It tasted amazing. I put it into my stackable planter. No, I didn't. I put it in a small terracotta pot because I wanted to be able to look at it separately so that I could put it on my porch table and look at it. And within, I'm going to say, a week, maybe 2, I was pulling that out and putting in one of the purple ladybug choys. I had overwatered it. And there's just no 2 ways about it. I'd overwatered the plant and killed it. So that was another worst spring crop. But all in all, I think that sounds pretty good. I had a really good growing season in the spring. Really proud of myself. What I did differently included, but not limited to, using fish emulsion on a weekly basis for watering all the plants. I used bone meal in the ones that needed bone meal. And I started with fresh soil. I didn't reuse anything this year. Not really. A couple things I did, but mostly, I would say 99% of it was all new soil. So, and then I also put compost this time in all of my plants at the beginning of their planting. Just the ones. I didn't do any top dressing or anything. So, between all those things and the weather cooperating and whatnot, I think this was a really good spring for me. I'm looking forward to the upcoming spring. I already have my planters worked out for like what I want to put in what. I was looking at it, and I might do a separate, video of this breakdown. But this year so far in the growing season, that's starting from the spring and up until like now, I have planted 22 different varieties of veggies, flowers, and herbs. Can you believe that? And that's not me saying that I grew a beefsteak tomato and a cherry tomato and a pear tomato. I'm just saying that I grew tomatoes and I grew peppers and I grew collards and I grew choy and I grew cukes and I grew, right. So that, for the amount of space that I have, that's pretty stinking amazing, right? I'm so proud of myself. So I have some big plans. You know, obviously I want to do it bigger and better, because if you ain't growing, then what the hell are you doing, right? So I'm excited. I'm obviously way ahead of myself. At the very earliest, based off of my notes from last year, I won't be able to start planting for the spring, even like starting indoors, until February. But okay, February it is. That's quite a ways from here. So I'm actually doing a lot of growing indoors, which is not, nothing new. I've done that for years now, especially since I've been owning the Aerogardens. And if you want, certainly go and check. I have a couple videos out right now about what's growing in the house, but not too many because I just now started growing in the house big time. Prior to that, I was obviously growing outdoors where most of my attention was focused, but now I'm indoors. So, but anyways, that was my spring growing season, and it was super positive, very productive, and I can't wait to do it again. All right, guys, thanks for sitting and listening to me, and I hope you got some ideas about what you want to plant, or even some ideas about what kind of information you want to keep. So that, personally, this information helped me plan what I want to do for 2021. So I took notes about how things grew, what worked, what didn't, what I did differently, where I think I was lacking, how I could change the way I grow things, maybe starting some things earlier, starting some things later, moving things as to where I have them set on the patio. So, yeah, maybe there's a lot going on here. Even if you don't find any plants that you want to grow, I might have given you some inspiration to go ahead, take some good notes, and get organized so they can help you in your future growing seasons. All right, so that's it for me. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll be in contact. Have a good one. Bye.